Hello, everyone. Welcome to Against the Grain, where we give you a fresh and unconventional take on sports. I'm Tim, your lead co-host.
And I'm Patrick, your other co-host.
All right, let's get right into it. First, we want to talk about the Deandre Jordan free agent saga. This story resembles Julia Roberts and the Runaway Bride. First, he agreed to sign with the Dallas Mavericks, but then he backed off his word and re-upped with the LA Clippers. Now, Patrick, he's been receiving a lot of criticism for this. Do you think that the criticism is warranted, or do you think that's being blown out of proportion?
It's completely warranted because he gave not only just the Dallas Mavericks, but also Mark Cuban his word, and he backed off on the deal. It's just not something you can do. You can't just give a guy your word and back off on it. And also, it's the way he did it, too. He was so flip-floppy on it. He couldn't make a decision. It was like, all right, if you're not 100% sure that you want to sign with the Mavericks, then don't say you're going to sign with the Mavericks, all right? If you thought that you might want to sign with the Clippers, then don't even mention it. Look, the whole thing with him is he went about it in a completely awful, unprofessional way, and he deserves any criticism directed his way.
Fair enough. Now, a lot of people think that the NBA free agent moratorium should be lifted. It won't next year. How it works now, for those who don't know, is July 1st is when free agency starts, but you can only sign verbal agreements. July 9th is when you can sign official agreements with new teams. Now, do you think that should be lifted, or do you think that it should be the way it is right now?
It should be lifted because it's an extremely dumb, archaic rule. It makes no sense that you can reach an agreement with the team, but you can't sign with the team until, 8 days later?
8 days
That's
later.
ridiculous. If you want to sign with the team, you can sign with the team. They don't do that in baseball. They don't do that in football. If I'm not mistaken, it's only basketball that does that, and that makes no sense. If I want to sign with, say, the Sacramento Kings, and I've reached an agreement with them on July 1st, then I should be able to sign with them. I should not have to wait 8 days, because the whole thing is, with 8 days, that's why Deandre Jordan ended up re-signing with the Clippers. He had time for his teammates, his coaches, the Clippers organization to kind of change his mind, and also him to sort of think about it. But if you don't want to go and initially sign with the team, and you have a little bit of doubt and reservations, then okay, don't do it. It's kind of like with LaMarcus Aldridge. At least with him, I know he left the Trailblazers for the Spurs, but with him, he took his time to make his decision, you know? If it's something like that, that's perfectly fine. Take some time, make the decision, make sure you're completely 100% sure of it, and that should be the end of it.
That's a good point. Now, another guy we got to talk about, because this is Patrick's favorite player, or one of his favorite players, Jeremy Lin, who signed with our hometown Charlotte Hornets. What do you think of that signing?
Yeah, I think it's a really good signing for the Hornets because the Hornets have absolutely no outside threat. They really don't have any outside shooting. Honestly, they're not a very good offensive team. So the hope is that with Jeremy Lin, he can join Kemba Walker and potentially make for a pretty entertaining squad, and hopefully they can make the playoffs.
It's the East.
It's the East, but the East has gotten a lot harder, so we'll see how Jeremy Lin does. I think Jeremy's a really good player that just kind of had a tough couple of years. And honestly, this past year with LA, that was his worst year. And it was his worst year because LA, for all the glitz and all the glamour and all the history, they've had a really rough past few years. And mainly it's because they don't have much talent and they don't really get that many marquee free agents because nobody wants to play with Kobe Bryant. He's extremely difficult to play with. He's not a very good teammate. And it's really hurt the team, honestly. So we'll see how Lin can do stepping out of Kobe's shadow and joining a pretty under-the-radar, low-key team like Charlotte.
Yeah, we wish him luck. This is, if I remember correctly, his fifth team because he's been on the Lakers, Warriors, Rockets, and Knicks before. So hopefully it works out well for him now. Another guy, LaMarcus Aldridge, you mentioned earlier, he signed with the Spurs. Do you think with him, Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Kawhi Leonard, all of those guys, do you think they're considered the favorites to win the whole thing, or do you still think the Warriors are the team to beat, period?
Yeah, I don't know about really saying either of those is the team to beat. I kind of want to say Cleveland. I know that, LaMarcus going to San Antonio, that's going to be a good move for them because you think about it, they have a really old core. I know that Tony's not that old, but Tony had an awful year last year. So hopefully LaMarcus can inject some kind of youth into the squad, and hopefully San Antonio can do pretty well. But no, I don't think it's going to be San Antonio, and I don't think it's going to be um,
Golden
State.
That's fair enough. I mean, I would say San Antonio just because they have such a great head coach, and I think adding LaMarcus Aldridge, he got a top 10 player, really helps that team out, but we'll see what happens. You mentioned Cleveland. What do you think of Kevin Love re-upping with Cleveland? Do you think if he's healthy, Kyrie and LeBron, that they would be the head over heels favorite, or do you think someone else should be considered that?
Yeah, I'm going to say Cleveland. Kevin Love, that's an okay agreement. It's not that great. He's a good player, but he just didn't really mesh that well in Cleveland. But Cleveland's got a good squad. I mean, they have Iman Shumpert, they have LeBron James, duh. They have Kyrie, they have Kevin Love. They might get J.R. Smith. Honestly, it's a pretty good core. Oh, and Timothy Mozgov. The thing is, this squad is going to be probably the best in the East and probably compete for the title, so we'll see what happens, but they didn't really have to get that many players in free agency. It really wasn't paramount.
Well, Cleveland better win the title. They're spending, I think, $90 million plus in salary. I mean, they're going to pay a hefty luxury tax, so they need to reap the benefits this time and get it done. I know that they were pretty frustrated. They had caught some unlucky breaks and couldn't win the title. But last but not least, we want to talk about the Washington Wizards, your favorite team. They did lose Paul Pierce, unfortunately, in free agency, but do you think they have compensated enough with the additions of Jared Dudley, Allen Anderson, and hopefully the further development of Otto Porter Jr.?
Yeah, it's an okay team. We'll see how Otto does. Otto's definitely improved a lot from his rookie year, and Jared Dudley, I think, is going to be a really good player for the Wizards. I think he's kind of underrated, but he's 6'8", so he can play shooting guard or small forward. He's got nice length. He's kind of like a similar build to Otto Porter, so we'll see how the Wizards do. The main thing with the Wizards is it's more so like how is Bradley Beal going to do and how are the players that they already have, because Beal hasn't been performing that well, but the Wizards, they should be fine. I mean, you have Gary Neal, you have Jared Dudley, Allen Anderson, so they got a couple of shooters to come off the bench. And then John Wall's performed really well recently. So the Wizards, it's like they're on the upswing, and maybe they can get the number 2 seed or number 3. We'll see.
That one last thing, because you mentioned Bradley Beal. He just finished his 3rd year, so he can get an extension. Do you think the Wizards will extend him? And if so, should they extend him?
Yeah, I think they will extend him, and I think they should, but I'm not sure how much money and how many years. I know definitely not a max. He's not worth that.
All right, well, it's good hearing from you, and thanks for watching us on another episode Against the Grain. Hope you all have a good weekend. Good night.